Hello, 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 guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Fine Print, your weekly poetry show where we take a look at poems that you've written and we just analyze them, see what exactly is going on. It's not a workshop. We're not here to give feedback necessarily. We're more just trying to see what is actually in the piece and analyzing it. Speakers, motivation, stakes, structure, things like that. The thing that we're going to be really targeting today, the piece that we're going to be looking at, is going to be looking at things like metaphor, specifically extended metaphors, techniques that you can apply to your own poems that maybe will help strengthen their imagery or the figurative language that you are using. Before we get too hardcore into anything, I also just want to give a quick reminder. We are organizing our poetry retreat, which will be in Columbus, Ohio, April 5th through the 7th. You can see also a link there to pre-register. Pre-registration is free. It's going to give you 3 days of very intense work. I've attended fellowships like Cave Canem and Kalu. It's definitely more like Kalu than Cave Canem in terms of the workload because we're going to be intense. Basically, from like 9 in the morning till 12, we'll be focusing on like writing and reading and analysis. And then in the afternoons from like 1 to 5, actually workshopping poems. We also have some trips and things like that planned. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, you go to versuspoetry.com/retreat. We would love to work with you there. And then we also have our poem. So this is a poem by Katie. Okay, Katie, Cecilia, I do want to thank them. Thank you for allowing us to dig into your work. We greatly, greatly appreciate that. Thanks to everyone. I mean, it's actually been, I do just have to give a quick shout out to the Threads poetry community because people turned up and it's wild because I basically asked for poems. I asked for people to submit pieces for us to consider for the show. And yeah, I got like 50 poets that are just sending me poems now. I'm like, if I stop now, I would have enough poems to last an entire year. So we're gonna try to find a way to make it work so we can get through more of those pieces because it's definitely been a very overwhelming response. So thanks to everyone who turned out. And sent us some pieces. We were going to figure out a way to get to as many of them as possible. But we do have for today this poem by Katie. I'm going to adjust so I can get my marker. And as I go through this exploration of the poem, this is just one person's thoughts. We can have a discussion, we can talk, so if you disagree with something I say, you agree with it. If you have a question about it, you see other things that I miss, please let us know. This is a team effort. I'm just one person. The poem does not have a title that I'm aware of. So let's take a quick read at it first. You were never mine to keep. Just some loose change, a dress I should have returned, but life got in the way. So you were thrown in the back of my closet with the shoes that are slightly too small. In the jacket I promised my mother I would wear, you were added to the list of things that should be long gone. But I held on to the sentimental value of a moment in time where picking you made sense. So maybe I should hand you away for someone else to wear, to see things in you that I never did. But you're still there, in the darkness of my closet, for my own selfish reasons, just in case you fit perfectly someday. Thanks again to Katie for allowing us to take a look at your work. So, I want to begin by highlighting our main focus of the stream today. Our main focus of the stream today is this idea of metaphor, specifically extended metaphor. And one of the reasons that I really like extended metaphor is tied to an issue that I see in a lot of people's poems where a lot of times images are suggested and then immediately dropped. You see this all the time, especially in fiction, but this occurs in poetry as well, where you have this great idea, you bring in this image, say things like he was tall like a mountain, and then you never bring back anything about mountains or height or things like that. And anytime you introduce metaphors, I think something that is worth asking yourself is, does this play into the larger context of the piece, or is this image that I'm bringing in very jarring and kind of a one off? It's not really something that's going to be connected with anything else in the piece. I think the more layers you can add to your poem, the more complexity you can add, and the greater enjoyment in a lot of ways I think there can be for the reader, because the reader has more opportunities to kind of dig in and discover. And if instead the piece is just kind of, just kind of the first image that pops into your head, and so suddenly we just kind of have these various images that aren't really connected, it can leave the reading experience to be a little bit less satisfying, because it's, like there's no thread to pull through. It's just like, you're just picking random. I mean, not random, but you're not really interested in tying things together. You're just picking up like sharp image, sharp image, sharp image, but there's no real thread that unites all of them together. The extended metaphor allows you to join everything together. Everything becomes part of a puzzle. It makes the word choices throughout the piece feel even all the more intentional, and it requires the reader to suddenly pay a lot more attention. And so I kind of want to demonstrate that as we explore this piece tonight, because I think it's occurring in a lot of places here, and see if you can identify the same ones I'm going to say. Maybe even pause the stream and see what you think the extended metaphor is in all the places where you see it occurring. And I want to compare the loose change aspect with, so we have the dress I should have returned. And then I'm going to actually do a different color. So let's do this orange. So dress I should have returned. Thrown in the back of my closet. Shoes that are slightly too small. Jacket. What jacket? The jacket I promised my mother I'd wear. The list of things that should be long gone, but I held on to. The idea of picking. Hand away, like hand-me-downs. Someone else to wear. See things. I want to come back to that. You're still there in the darkness of my closet, and this idea of fitting. Okay, so when I talk about extended metaphor, this is what I'm talking about. The clothing images and the word choices that are tied to attire appear over and over and over again. In fact, it's almost in every single line here. I would say a solid like 70% of the poem, as 70% of the lines of the poem are incorporating that idea of clothing or things like that. Which then makes some of the other word choices kind of stand out more. And I don't know if it's a positive thing or a negative thing, or it kind of to break the pattern. So, for instance, loose change to me, this doesn't, I'm missing the connection to the clothing. So I'm kind of wondering, is this an opportunity, or is it like, no, we don't want to overwhelm? So I'm curious about the decision to use loose change in that first part when everything else is so heavy on the clothing images. And then later, this idea of to see things in you that I never did. This is another moment that to me kind of broke from the larger extended metaphor. I'm wondering if there was a verb or something like that potentially that could have gone on to be more connected, like for someone else aware to see things. And maybe like, for instance, that word things, again, very general, right? So maybe to see opportunities, or like to see a place to put a patch on a hole that I didn't want to get rid of. Yeah, no, that's a horrible example, but I'm wondering if there's a way that we could like there were potentials, if we wanted there to be, to continue working in the extended metaphor of the clothing and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious about that decision to instead use C. But regardless, talking about just again the larger sense of extended metaphor here, everything is really the intentionality of all these other choices going back to clothing, I think, are huge. And these are the things that you want to, I think, when you're writing a poem, be kind of thinking about. How is everything connected? And this is also important in drafting too, because when you make a first draft, and I'm not saying that that's the case here, but like for instance, when you make a first draft, you write your line. A lot of people start from the top and then kind of work their way down, right? For a first draft. And so maybe with the first draft, you get something like loose change, and then you get your dress, and then you get thrown in the back of your closet, and then you're like thinking, oh, there's this kind of thread going on. Let's keep going with this. Let's see where the clothes images go. But then if you never go back and revise, you might not ever change back things that occur earlier. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's the case. Just using that as an example with the loose change. So this is, again, another reason why revising is so important. A lot of times you don't really know what your poem's saying in the first draft until maybe the end of the first draft. And you're like, oh, this is what the poem's really about. And then when you make the revisions, then it's like, okay, now that I have some direction for the piece, now what I can do is I can start amplifying those choices, right? I can be like, oh, before I use this color, but if I change the color now, this will fit in more with the image. Or maybe before I use this piece of furniture, but now if I use this other piece of furniture, it's going to fit in more with the theme, or things like that. Or maybe I wrote a poem it's a sunny day, but no, this poem actually maybe needs some rain, or maybe needs some thunder. And those are things that are going to only maybe reveal themselves after you have that first draft finished, right? So I really like those choices with the clothing. Let me know your own thoughts. Does that loose change image, after you've seen all these other elements of clothing tied in, does the loose change kind of stand out to you as off? Or do you think it fits? Or what's kind of your take on that? And also your impressions of the C things as well. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts on that, because those are two places that kind of are standing out to me right now. So I'm kind of curious about those choices. That's our big thing that I want you to be targeting in poems, thinking about in your own pieces. Let me know if you used an extended metaphor in one of your pieces recently. You can let me know what that metaphor was. It'd be great to hear. What are some other things that are going on? I want to kind of explore the speaker. Let's see all the things that we learn about our speaker. You were never mine to keep. That's kind of an interesting sentence, right? Like, who are we telling this to? Like, because to me, the impression I'm kind of getting in this line, the impression I'm getting is that this is a speaker almost like trying to like convince themselves of this. Who are they talking to? Who is this poem talking to? Is this poem talking to them? Is this the speaker talking to themselves? Kind of just like reflecting on the situation. Just some loose change. You were never mine to keep. Just some loose change. There's almost like this sense of like there is some worth, but it's very, very little. We're describing someone as worthless. So there's kind of this interesting contradiction. You were never mine to keep. Because that almost implies that maybe we didn't always think that. Or maybe there was a different perspective. And now we've changed. And in fact, we've changed in some ways like a complete 180. You were never mine to keep. Just some loose change. You're worthless. You have very little value. Ouch. Address, and that's kind of the other thing that I think is really interesting, just to go back to the extended metaphor thing, because it's like this line wasn't even necessary in a lot of ways, right? You could take this out. You were never mine to keep. Address, I should have returned. I mean, that's a very natural progression too, right? So by keeping this line, like, wow, we are putting so much value on the need to tell this other person that they're worthless by keeping that line. Man. Um, Address I should have returned. I always think it's interesting what people do with I. I don't use punctuation in my poems. I do capitalize I. I think so. What are the implications of a lowercase I? I think it's interesting in a poem that's talking about already in the first two lines. It's been talking about value and associating value with people, um, assuming you as a person. Um, we also it begins to also kind of raise some questions about how does the speaker value themselves. Using a lowercase I could, not saying it does, but it could suggest a lower placed value on the self. Address I should have returned, but life got in the way. When I was at Callaloo, I was working with Greg Pardlow. If you don't know Greg Pardlow, he won the Pulitzer Prize some time ago. He was an alcoholic. He applies a lot of the methods used from AA meetings to poetry, which means that everything gets analyzed. And so this line here, I can tell you right now, in a workshop with him would have gotten a lot of attention, but life got in the way. What is life? What are we what's hiding here? And again, not really trying to approach this from a workshop perspective, but just from a reader's perspective. When I read a line out like that, I'm like, that's an interesting thing. Life got in the way. That could be a million things, right? It could be, oh, my car broke down. Oh, we had a death in the family. So when we just say life, we're distancing. We are intentionally not allowing our reader into the poem. Because if you were letting me in the poem, you would tell me, which is fine. That's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. You can serve the poem to do that, especially when done with intentionality. But at the same time, when that happens, it's also going to raise some questions. What is it that we don't feel comfortable sharing? And why don't we feel comfortable sharing it? But life got in the way. So you were thrown in the back of my closet. So interesting. That's an interesting progression too. Life got in the way. So because life got in the way, you were thrown in the back of my closet. Well, does one thing lead to the other? So just because life gets in the way, that's why you're in the back of my closet? I mean, you could have hung out on the bed or just forever, or you could have hung out on the dresser, you could have been in the shelf, but no. Life gets in the way, so you're thrown in the back of the closet. So I'm kind of curious about that progression there. Why does that? It's like, why does one cause two? Why does life getting in the way cause the thing to get thrown into the back of the closet? Because it doesn't have to. We're like justifying it. It's like our mind's like, no, it makes sense. Life got in the way, so you went in the back of my closet. But it's like, well, does everyone do that with everything? Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about that. So you're thrown in the back of my closet with the shoes that are slightly too small. So now we're getting an idea. We're getting deeper into this speaker. So what does this speaker do? When this speaker doesn't have time for you or doesn't find value in you, what does this speaker do? This speaker like hide you? Hide you away? The shoes are too small. The jacket they promised their mother. Very interesting detail, right? With the jacket. This is the most personal detail we are. I would argue this might be the most personal detail we're given in the entire poem. The jacket I promised my mother I would wear. Hi, Mom. Where'd you come from, right? The mom. It's one of those cases where a character just kind of comes out of nowhere, right? In this case, it's the mom. We didn't mention the mom anywhere else. The mom appears here. The speaker obviously has some sort of connection with the mom. Um, because the mom doesn't need to be here. This could have just said the jacket I promised I would wear, but no. This jacket I promised my mother I would, and it's not actually. It's not even my mom. It's my mother. It's not my mom. It's my mother. So already, what interesting tensions. Tensions. Now I'm curious all about what is going on with this speaker and their mom. Because something's going on. And I'm not saying it's like a bad relationship or anything like that. But there's something going on. I'm hiding a jacket. It's not even that I'm keeping a jacket because I told my mom I would wear it and I haven't. But I feel guilty about not having it. So I keep it. I could just get rid of the jacket. I just tell my mom, but why can't I do that? What's going on in terms of that relationship dynamic? I find that very interesting. Um, anyways, you were added to the list of things that should be long gone. So our speaker's a hoarder. Our speaker has a problem with letting go. Our speaker is afraid maybe of judgment or other people's views on stuff. I don't know. Afraid of something with regards to relationships. You were added to a list of things that should be long gone, but I held on to. Why did the speaker do all this? Why are they holding on to things? The sentimental value of a moment in time. So we have a speaker that places a lot of weight on sentimental value. We have a speaker that has a hard time letting go. Why do they have a hard time letting go? I think that's interesting. One of the things you see, and I'm not saying that this speaker necessarily is a hoarder, but I think one of the things that you see with hoarding is it's a trauma response, right? You see a lot with people that have survived like wartime or periods of poverty where you keep everything because you know what it's like to lose things. So the kind of the question I also have for the speaker, why do they have a hard time? Why the difficulty with letting go in this poem? Why are they holding on to things? What does that help them cope with? I think that's interesting. But I held on to. And they know they're holding on to things. Added to the list of things. And in fact, the list of things. So this is many things. And the speaker's aware of this. Sentimental value of a moment in time. That's an interesting phrase. The sentimental value of a moment in time. Because a lot of times the sentimental value, I think, is attached to a physical thing. And now we're not attaching it to a physical thing. We're attaching it to time. We're picking you made sense. List of things. You were at a list of things that should be long gone, but I held on to. I'm holding on to you because of that. One time where picking you made sense. This is kind of so this whole section, this is all kind of a unit. You were added to the list of things that should be long gone, but I held on to. The sentimental value of a moment in time where picking you made sense. All of this is kind of, I think, kind of needs to be read together. By the way, guys, if you think I'm crazy on anything I've said, let me know. I know a couple of people are with me. Um, you were at a list of things that should be long gone, but I held on to the sentimental value of a moment in time where picking you made sense. So it's not even, I'm not even holding on to you. I'm not keeping you for you. I'm keeping you because of the value, the sentimental value I have from that moment where picking you made sense. Again, so we're placing a lot of value on the emotional things. I mean, the emotions that things give us, but not necessarily from the thing, right? Um, I can't get rid of the jacket because I promised my mom I would wear it, even though I'm probably not going to wear it. And it's that there's some element of the relationship, even though my mom doesn't even know if I would wear it or don't wear it. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing kind of with this you. And then we get another so. So we get this so. We had this so earlier. These so's are interesting because these so's are there's like these moments of just like logical progression or like attempts at logical progression or like if you just kind of read it in passing, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But then like you take a moment, think about it, like, wait, does that actually make sense? Um, so maybe I should hand you away. These so's are very interesting moments. How did we get to that conclusion? How did I get to this conclusion that I should hand you away? So again, this is just a question I have as a reader. It's like, how did the speaker reach this conclusion that they should just hand it away? How did that even happen? Because are they just like thinking and realizing that, man, I have a lot of stuff. Maybe it's time I actually do something with this stuff. Is that what happened? We're just kind of reflecting on everything, and then we're like, oh, now you know what? Maybe I should change. How did the speaker reach the conclusion to hand that they should maybe hand away? It's kind of interesting how we got there. For someone else to wear. It's interesting because the line could have just stopped there for someone else to wear, but you are still there. But instead, we go deeper, right? For someone else to wear, to see things in you that I never did. Hmm. To see things in you. And again, we're going back to things. Where else did we see things? We saw things earlier, right? I'm always curious when words repeat. So we had things here. Where was the other things? Your number on key, then the shoes, the list of things over here. To see things in you that I never did. What are these things? So just a question I would have as a reader. What are those things that I never did see? And I guess I'm a little bit mildly confused, but maybe I'm just missing something. So we say that you were at a list of things that should be long gone, but it held on to the seminal value of a moment in time where picking you made sense. So picking you made sense. There was a moment where picking you made sense. However, at the same time, there are things in you that even when picking you made sense, I never could actually see in you. Am I understanding that right? So I'm keeping you around because it reminds me of that time when picking you made sense. That's why I'm keeping you around. However, Even though there was a moment where picking you made sense, there are things in you that I never actually saw, but that others would see and that others would want. But they're not, but I didn't see the things that I would want. So I'm slightly confused about this relationship with the speaker and the you a little bit. But you guys can let me know how how that's coming across to you. To me, that's slightly confusing. Um, so maybe I should hand you away for someone else to wear to see things in you that I never did. But you're still there in the darkness of my closet for my own selfish reasons, just in case you fit perfectly someday. Okay. So I never saw the things that maybe I was looking for to see, but other people may see them. However, I'm still hopeful that one day I will see them. Is that how I'm supposed to interpret that close? I'm hopeful that one day I will see the things in you that I want to see. But you're still there in the darkness of my closet for my own selfish reasons. There's two lines in this poem that I think are particularly intriguing, just for the amount of info that they convey. I'm going to erase all these notes because this is getting kind of messy. The two lines that I think are really interesting because they reveal the most, in my opinion, about the speaker. On this very initial reading, I've not read this poem a ton of times. So I might completely disagree with everything I'm telling you if I read this like 10 more times. The I promised my mother I would wear, and just the relationship between the speaker and the mom that's being suggested by that. And then the for my own selfish reasons. Isn't it the labeling? If you're still there in the darkness of my closet for my own selfish reasons. So we have a speaker who goes through some interesting things. You were never mine to keep. Again, the speaker talking, maybe trying to convince themselves of that, or just being honest that they understand it, but just not caring. Or not caring enough to change it, right? Because they are selfish and they know that they are selfish and they're leveling that onto themselves. I think that, like the idea of judgment is really interesting in this poem. Because on the one hand, there's almost like this fear of judgment from others. Like for instance, the jacket. And with the mom. But at the same time, the willingness to judge the self. I'm selfish. Um, I know that these things should be gone and things like that. Like I feel like the speaker's quick to kind of judge their own decisions and things like that, but also trying to avoid that same judgment from others. Just in case you fit perfectly. And there's just interesting ironies. You have a speaker that tries to be like logical throughout this and like use reason, but then that reason ultimately kind of fails to emotion. Because I'm doing this. It doesn't make sense. I should hand you away, but for my own selfish reasons, I'm holding out just in case. I'm still being hopeful, even though there's no indication that there's going to be change. I'm still hoping. So you have these constant kind of plays between logic and emotion, and the emotion keeps winning out, which I think is interesting. Um, All right, we've already been speaking about this poem now for over half an hour. Hopefully, this again gives you some ideas about images, imagery, extending your metaphors. Consider it all the images. Are there ways that maybe you can tie your images together more throughout your piece? Also, speakers and the details. So every line you're giving speaks to some element of the speaker to a degree, or the characters in your piece. So what are you saying about your own speakers in your poem? What are the motivations? What's hiding? What are the things that the speaker knows that you don't know, or that you're not telling yourself as you write it, that you can try to pick up on when you revise? Those are the things I'll be paying attention to. All right, guys, thank you so much for spending some time with me here at Fine Print. We're do this on Sundays, again, typically 9 to 9:30 p.m. It's slightly long today. Um, Unfortunately, it's not really a show about answers. It's more just a show about just kind of digging into poems. However, there's things that you noticed about the piece that I didn't get into. I would love to know what your thoughts are as well. Once more, my name is Jeff. We have a poetry retreat coming up. Just want to give one final reminder. So, again, April 5th through the 7th. If that sounds like something that you are interested in, you want to come to Columbus, Ohio to do a poetry retreat with me, it would be great to see you, meet you. You can find out more information at diversespoetry.com/retreat. I hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, have a good afternoon. Thank you for your time.